you cannot come out to Oklahoma and not speak to a very special guest. Like, for example, the senator from Oklahoma made his way here. Even though he's in Washington and we're in Tulsa, here's Senator Lankford. He spoke to us earlier. All right, Senator James Lankford, thanks so much for joining us. First off, I'm in Oklahoma. You're in Washington, D.C. I don't know why you'd ever leave this state. It's fantastic.
That state is fantastic. My home state is a great place with tremendous people and a beautiful place to be able to go. And so I'm glad you're getting a chance to be there. And it's very odd for you to be there and for me to be stuck in D.C. today. We
Absolutely.
do have both. We've got things and work to get done here, though.
I know you absolutely do. And now it seems as though, with you as the only member of the Senate who's on a Senate Intelligence Committee as well as Homeland Security, you're uniquely qualified to answer this. Why is it that the threat against America has been at least 2 years old? Of course, Al-Qaeda longer than that, but from ISIS at least 2 years old. But it's Russia and France that are leading the march in the United Nations for a war against ISIS. What's going on here?
It's truly bizarre, and what's been interesting is the president has been loosely engaged in what he calls a containment strategy on ISIS, that he wants to just keep it from spreading other places, but not really solve the problem, because he knows, and all the internal advisors know, the real issue is Bashar Assad in Syria, and the president hasn't come up with what to do with Syria and Assad, and so he's stalling with ISIS, trying to figure out what to do with Syria, and the whole thing's just flying apart on him as he waits. So the dithering that's here is actually causing a tremendous amount of national security risk around the world, and especially for Americans. So it's an odd spot where France is the bellicose leader of the world on how we're going to actually engage and try to solve a problem, and America sitting back saying we're considering it.
You know, we're seeing what's happening in Honduras, and we see the execution of hostages, where we're seeing the attacks in Paris, the shooting down of a plane in Egypt. When you look at our enemy and study the intelligence that I don't get, why do they want a global war that clearly they can't win? They had a chance to sideline us and make us the great Satan who's in everybody's business, and we've heard that since the dawning of time. Why do they want a global war? Have you figured that out?
It is. This is a very apocalyptic belief that they have. This particular segment of Islam, of Sunni Islam, and this particular thread of it is not shared by all members of Sunni Islam, but this particular thread of it is an end times focus. They believe that if a caliphate exists on the earth, it is their religious obligation to come serve the caliphate. And so individuals that are there in Syria and Iraq that are leading this send out a message worldwide. If you believe like we do, then come fight for the caliphate, because the caliphate exists now, and you have a religious obligation to do that. And if you can't fight there, then fight where you are and just start the war, because they believe at the end there'll be a huge war of the West against Islam, and they feel like they are sparking the fire, to spark the fire between the West and Islam. And when everyone engages, they believe that's exactly what needs to be done. So it's something we in the West can't even begin to comprehend, that particular type of belief. But they feel like they are doing God's bidding to be able to take that on, to be able to start a worldwide war against Islam. And I find that odd, to say the least. It's a very small group of fighters there. Now, they're ruthless, but you go, while you're in Oklahoma, you can go to any one of our football stadiums for any of our universities, and if you just look at how many people could sit in the stands there, all of the ISIS fighters in the entire world could fit inside of one of our football stadiums. It's not a large group, but they're dominating a tremendous amount of territory based on just ruthless tactics.
Here is Mike Morrell. He told us this yesterday, the former deputy director of the CIA, Cut 7.
ISIS is not only a terrorist group, it is also a revolutionary political movement, right? And what they want is not just their caliphate in Iraq and Syria, right? They're not just going to be happy with that. They want a caliphate everywhere in the world. They want a caliphate here, where we would live under their extreme religious views. And that extremist ideology, that revolutionary political ideology, is spreading like wildfire. There are militant groups and extremist groups in 20 countries now that have signed up to the ISIS philosophy. So, world war, yeah, sounds right to me.
So that's Morrell. I guess that's exactly what you're saying.
It is. It is actually, and they continue to push country to country, and we've seen it. And if Americans will take a deep breath and look around, they'll see the same thing as well. Libya, Tunisia, Afghanistan, Pakistan, a large push in Australia, obviously trying to reach out here into the United States, all across France, all across Iraq and Syria, obviously. But Americans that I've talked to has been interesting. I've had folks that have called me and said, "Can anything like this come to the United States?" And I try to remind them of this past May, the ISIL folks reached out to some people in Arizona that believe their way and said, go to Garland, Texas, and go shoot up this event. And those folks drove cross country with their guns ready to go, and then stepped out there, and Texas law enforcement met them literally at the curb, and they didn't make it into the building. But the challenge was this has already begun, where two attackers actually drove cross country to do a violent attack in the United States.
It's unbelievable. We're talking to Senator Lankford of Oklahoma and senators in Washington. We happen to be on the road in Oklahoma today, so we want to make sure to put you on, not only to make my voiceover guy seem as though he's going through puberty, but also let everybody know how valuable you are to the country as a member of the Senate Intelligence Committee as well as Homeland Security. So, in the big picture, we did get some good news today, and it turns out the mastermind of the Paris attacks was blown apart in a very long, fierce raid in Paris. Senator, when I look at this, I say, great, I'm glad he's dead. But what about the audacity of perpetrating this type of multifaceted killing spree and then staying about a mile from where you did it to plan perhaps another? That shows you the mindset of the people we're dealing with, or does it show you something different?
No, it shows that he is continuing to focus on what can he do next, how can he lay low, try to live this out, and then go from there. As is typical for this particular type of fight and this particular type of fighters, they look for young men that will go and help them fight the fight, and then they'll send them out to go be suicide bombers, and the planners actually try to survive it, and they try to find some way to be able to live to fight another day. But they're very willing to be able to send their younger fighters out to go be suicide bombers, and that's what we saw here, and I'm sure we'll see again in other places.
So let's talk about here. The refugees are coming here. Now, we have some Democrats who are using some common sense and saying, is it right currently to allow the refugee program to have men come in between 18 and 40, knowing that we do not have a sufficient screening process? So there's a movement in the House to pass a resolution that would put a pause on this. Is that correct? And if so, where do we stand? Because the president, even from his, even though he's in the Philippines and traveling around now to China, he is saying, you put anything on my desk like this and I will veto it.
Which is fascinating to me. The president continues to focus on it. Just his isolation from the rest of the country continues to show. What's really occurring is the nation does not trust President Obama's leadership. They've seen what his opinions are on immigration. We're seeing how open he is on the borders. And so when, again, we see a real threat coming from the outside into the United States, Americans just inherently think, I'm not sure this president's watching out for the national security at the level that I want him to. And so Americans are pushing back. They don't want to hear the rest of the story. They don't want to hear the details. They want to know what is being done to be able to keep us safe. I had an exchange of letters back and forth with Secretary Kerry several weeks ago now that I raised this issue to Secretary Kerry and asked about the process. So between he and Jay Johnson, I got a response back actually just a few days ago saying that they are being thorough in their vetting of the refugees coming in, but they're treating them exactly the same as every other refugee coming in the country. Now, the problem that I have with that is I don't want them to treat them the same. The refugees coming out of Syria, I want to treat different than I'm treating the folks coming out of Central America or Central Africa. This is a different group of individuals that are coming in. We have less intelligence information on these individuals, and we have to know who we're bringing in, or we don't allow them to come in the country. And I have no confidence they really have that kind of positive ID.
Well, I'll tell you what, there are some Democrats, including Senator Schumer, who want a pause on this, even though the president wants to vilify you guys for standing up. Rick Scott said this last night on Hannity. He said, I got the White House on the phone last night. I asked him 3 questions. How's your vetting better than the French vetting? Because I'm sure the French government didn't want somebody to pose as a refugee and come into their country and become a terrorist. He says, it's just better. Are you going to give me or my law enforcement the background information on each refugee? No, we are not. Are you going to give give me any authority to make decisions for my state. The White House answer, no. Why is that okay when 32 governors are concerned and most of America is concerned overwhelmingly by these polls? Is this president a king, or is he an elected leader that has to listen to the people that put him there?
Well, what's interesting is he is trying to take on the political position on this when everyone else is just focused in on national security. He's trying to score some sort of political points with his statement earlier this week, which was just nonsensical. Now these Republicans are afraid of 3-year-old orphans. They're so scared of everything, and I think you not only is that disconnected from reality, but that's also trying to play politics with something where we should actually deal with what is the first role of government, keeping the United States safe. National security is first role. So you tell me what we're doing, and his statement is very similar to what came back to Governor Scott there. That is, trust us, we're looking at it. Well, I've asked the questions of how it's being done, and I've heard the answers in classified settings. I know what the process is, and I would tell you, no, we should not as a nation just trust it and say it's going to work out okay. Now, the refugees are not hitting the shores and 3 days later coming to the United States. It is about an 18 to 24-month process to go from applying for refugee status to go through the whole process. There's a live interview, there's face-to-face, there's background if they can get it, so it is a long process. I have no question on that. My challenge is, how is this different in what we're doing with this area, knowing the unique threats that are there than other areas, and I don't get a clear answer on that.
We're coming to you live from his hometown, KRMG over in Tulsa, AM 740 locally, as we bring the national show here. Senator Lankford, I think Oklahoma's lucky to have you, and I'm so glad you joined us this morning.
Thanks, Brian. Thanks for what you're doing, and enjoy some great barbecue and people there in Oklahoma.
Right. I just want to know, can I get your credit card? Because I'm tired of laying out money.
That would be an answer of no. Sorry about that.
Okay. Thank you very much. Senator, thanks so much. Go get busy. I know you are, as you try to get home on this Thursday. Meanwhile, we're going to be back from Oklahoma here on the National Network on Kilmeade and Friends in just a moment.